Rev up your engines!
Well, now the car manufacturers are whining that Trump's tariffs could quickly cut North American auto production by 1/3. Right? So now they're all whining. Oh, if you tariff North America and Canadians and the Mexicans, we're going to lose 1/3 of our sales. They claim that the lost production would be 20,000 units per day that they wouldn't be selling now. Even if that were the case, it's their own fault. This will destroy our sales and it'll cost people more for their cars and you'll lose American jobs. You know what I have to say about it? You're the swines that put your production down there. Moved it to Mexico. Years ago, moved it to Canada. And you know why it was done? Because it was cheaper to build cars. Originally, it was cheaper to build cars in Canada. And of course, when they started going down to Mexico decades ago, it really got to be cheaper. And they make hundreds of thousands of their vehicles. Ram trucks, Ford trucks, Toyota trucks, GM trucks, down in Mexico every year. Hundreds of thousands of them. They didn't move them down there to be nice. They moved them down there to make them cheaper. Yet, let's scratch our heads. Gee, you look at the price of some of these new trucks. They're $80,000, $90,000. They're not passing the savings on to us, right? They just want to make more money. Now they're whining, you can't tariff. We moved our factories. They don't talk about we're moving our factories, but they did. So, Trump's idea, okay, make them build factories in the United States to make them. A good idea, right? But you think these rich corporations are going to stand for that? They're going to start writing checks real fast so that they don't put a tariff on them, so that they don't have to increase cost of building them. Because, what's the difference whether they make them for 25% more or they're brought in here and there's a 25% tariff put on them, right? Either way, it costs them more. And all those factories they build down in Mexico for billions of dollars, and they still got ones that aren't even done yet that they're building for future production. Guess what? And then, how's that money down the toilet because they tried to save money the wrong way? I think it's hilarious that the automakers are whining about it, saying it's going to cost us. Hey, you've been screwing us over by giving us Mexican junk that isn't as well made as the stuff that was made in here. Canada's a different story. The Canadians, if anything, do a better job making cars than Americans do. They do a great job. That's a completely different scenario. But they don't make the large amount of vehicles that we buy like they do in Mexico. Most of the stuff comes from Mexico. And it's just too bad if you don't like the little tariff that ruins your, let's rip everybody off and move the jobs, and let's just rip everybody off with expensive vehicles, but make them cheaper in Mexico because we can make more profit for ourselves. Well, too bad, isn't it? Now, if you're wondering how those import tariffs might affect cars, here's something you probably don't know about. There are so many imported parts on vehicles these days, it would make your head spin. And even if they're not put together in Mexico, parts come there and then they're put together. For example, on a Chevy Silverado, listen to this. A supercharger, made in Mexico. Brake system, made in Mexico. The stabilizer for the brake system, made in Mexico. The exhaust, made in Mexico. And GPS systems are made in China. The power steering, made in Mexico. The door trim panel and other body parts, made in Mexico. The shock absorbers, made in Mexico. And it goes on and on and on. These parts come from all over the place because GM is a big believer in, let's make them as cheap as we can, and we don't care if we can farm them out, it's cheaper. Why should we make shock absorbers? We can get them from Mexico, a lot cheaper, made down there. Quite a few of the American trucks are made in Mexico. Hundreds of thousands of them have been made in Mexico. Same thing with Ford, same thing with Dodge, Ram, Stellantis, whatever you want to call them, right? Toyota now makes all of their Tacomas in Mexico that they sell in the United States. So if there is a tariff on this stuff, it's insidious. It just creeps in everywhere because these companies, they're buying stuff from all over the world to save money building them. Maybe a tariff thing would be a good idea to implement. Now we all know a lot of it's just threats and nothing ever becomes of it for any length of time. They rattle people's cages and then see what kind of a deal they can get, right? But if you didn't know, the next time you look at a brand new car, in the United States by law, they got a list in all the American vehicles of where the parts came from. I had a guy bring me a new Ford the other day, and it had parts from all over the world. It'd say like 58% from the United States and Canada. Then it would say so much from Mexico, some from Taiwan, some from the Philippines. And then they had one that was others. That was like 12% others. They were smaller, so they didn't have to list them all. But they come from everywhere. I think it's stupid because what do they say? The chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if you're buying crap from overseas and that's the weakest link and it breaks on your vehicle, there goes your vehicle because you decided to save a few dollars building them, even though you didn't lower the price to us consumers, and down goes the whole vehicle because you bought a cheap part. Now here's one I got to laugh my rear end off. The title is Toyota and Lexus Lose Their Reliability Crown to a Worthy Rival. And according to them, the worthy rival is Subaru. Now this was based on data from Consumer Reports. And let me tell you something. Those idiots don't know what they're talking about. Because I'm looking at it right now, and they based it on data, supposedly of 300,000 vehicles from 2000 to 2025. Well, let me tell you something, people. If you know anything about Subarus from 2000 to 2025, they have had so many problems. Engines blowing up, transmissions going out. They make them cheaper. They don't use gaskets in a lot of places. They use air-dried RTV silicone glue, and then when they get a little older, the glue dries out, they leak, and many of the Subaru boxer engines, you got to pull the engine out to change it, spend a whole bunch of money because they're leaking where a Toyota wouldn't be leaking or a Lexus wouldn't be leaking because they use regular gaskets. They don't have a problem with that, right? That's crazy. Something goes wrong, you want to see if it's going wrong, right? Now, anybody can say that they're reliable. Reliability is such a subjective thing in many cases. And in this case, these guys don't know what they're talking about. Subaru wouldn't have been the company that I picked, not in the least by the problems that I see from them. I would have picked Honda over Subaru for sure, you know? These Consumer Reports companies, I don't know who's writing for them, what they really know. They're obviously not mechanics, because any mechanic would tell you that's a bunch of malarkey, that Subarus aren't the new dependable cars. They just aren't. I've even seen some of these Consumer Reports that they write Chrysler and even sometimes Land Rover as good vehicles. You can't listen to those. You got to find a mechanic like me, somebody who understands it, who's been around long enough to see here's what's true and here's what's not, and that isn't getting paid to do advertising. I don't do paid advertising, so I don't have to tell any lies to you. I just tell you what I see as a mechanic and what I see from my customers and from all you viewers, the problems you have. And let me tell you, Subaru is not more reliable. Well, it looks like the handwriting's starting to get on the wall for old Tesla. Tesla's sales in China from February to February were down 49.2%. Now, some people are saying, well, this is just an oddity because it's the Chinese New Year. They're on vacation. They're not buying cars. But Tesla's Chinese competitor, BYD, their electric cars, okay, during that same period of time, they had a 90.4% increase in sales. So they can't blame Tesla's drop on, oh, it's the new year. You know, people aren't buying them. They went down 49%, and BYD electric cars went up 90%. So you can't even say that it's not people that are accepting electric cars, which they seem to accept more in China, but they're not accepting the Tesla. They're accepting their own electric cars, the BYDs. So Tesla's starting to get in some deep doo-doo. Here in the United States, the Cybertruck's been a massive, and Elon with his right-wing stuff, he's been getting flack, so a lot of the people that were into electric cars tended to be left-wingers anyways. Now, they don't like it, so they're not buying his cars. But you can't blame it on that, because the Chinese are communists, theoretically anyways, and they're slowing down buying his, and they're buying their own stuff. Things aren't looking all rosy for Tesla now. Even the Chinese who like electric cars aren't buying them or buying their own. They're in problems. That bloated stock is going to start coming down like it should have in the first place. There's no way that company is worth the money that it was supposed to be worth. A lot of their profit was selling carbon capture crap. A lot of their profit was from Bitcoin because Tesla, the company, bought a bunch of Bitcoin. Didn't have anything to do with actually making cars and making a profit. Well, if you're worried about a self-driving Cruise or other self-driving car running into you while you're driving down the road, you better watch out for Maserati because they have an AI-driven supercar that shattered the speed record for self-driven cars. There's nobody driving it. It went 197.7 miles per hour on the strip where the space shuttle used to land. Maserati itself is in deep trouble. They've been in trouble for a long time. These exotic cars that they don't sell that many of them. Being an Italian company, the quality isn't all that great on those things. Almost 200 miles an hour. It's a good thing they're doing it on test tracks because I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that stuff when something goes wrong. You know, as per usual, guys with companies like Maserati, they got to brag about speed, totally unusable speed. You can't drive that anywhere. It's unsafe speed to drive on the streets, right? These things should be limited to track use only if it really made sense. You shouldn't even be able to drive those things on the street. If they can go that fast, they can create a lot of problems, right? So maybe not such a smart idea to make them go so fast, but Maserati had one driving itself go that fast, and as of yet, they haven't smashed it up. Of course, it's a very short track, so they haven't done a lot of mileage, long-distance testing with it yet either. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.